Welcome to Daily English Stories. Every story hides a world. Some inspire, some haunt, some stay forever. Chapter 1. The Farewell. The morning of my departure felt different from any other morning I had lived before. The air itself seemed heavier, as though it carried the weight of my decision. I woke up before the call to prayer, my eyes refusing to stay shut, my heart caught between excitement and sorrow. The suitcase stood by the door, neatly packed and zipped, silently reminding me that this was not a dream. I was leaving. In the quiet of the early dawn, I walked through the house I had always known, touching the walls as if they could somehow remember me when I was gone. The kitchen still smelled of last night's tea, and the curtains swayed gently with the breeze as if waving me goodbye. My mother was already awake. She sat at the dining table with her prayer beads in hand, her lips whispering silent prayers for my safety. When she looked up at me, her eyes were filled with both pride and sadness. She held me for a long moment, tighter than usual, as though she wanted to keep a part of me with her. My father, who rarely showed emotion, placed his hand on my shoulder firmly. His silence said everything words could not. My younger siblings tried to smile, but their eyes betrayed them, glistening with the fear of distance and change. I hugged them each one by one, telling them to study hard, to behave, to look after each other. They laughed through their tears, promising they would. The neighbours gathered outside as I carried my bags to the waiting car. Some offered blessings, others gave advice, and a few simply stood quietly, their faces soft with farewell. It felt as if I was not just leaving my home, but an entire world that had shaped me. The car ride to the airport stretched endlessly. Every street, every shop, every corner held a memory. The bakery at the corner where I bought sweets as a child, the park where I played cricket with friends, even the old school gate that once seemed so tall. All of it passed by in a blur, like pages of a book turning too quickly to read again. As we drove, my mind raced ahead to London, the city of lights, of dreams, of new beginnings. I had seen it in movies, read about it in books, but what would it feel like to live there? The thought both thrilled and terrified me. Would I find friends? Would I fit in? Would I make my family proud? At the airport, time seemed to speed up. Security checks, ticket counters, luggage drops. Everything happened in quick succession, leaving little space for emotion. Yet, when it was finally time to part, everything slowed down. My mother's hands trembled as she adjusted my scarf. My father cleared his throat too often, and my siblings clung to me until the very last call. I tried to be strong, but as I stepped toward the gate, the tears I had been holding back finally escaped. I waved one last time, my vision blurred, my heart torn between staying and leaving, and then, with heavy steps, I walked toward the unknown. The flight to London awaited me, carrying with it the promise of a new chapter, but also the echo of the life I was leaving behind.
As the plane lifted from the ground, I looked out of the window. The city lights below grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, whispering a silent promise to myself. I will not forget where I came from, no matter where I go. And with that vow, my journey to London truly began. Chapter 2. A New World. The moment the plane touched down in London, a wave of anticipation and nervousness washed over me. I pressed my forehead gently against the small window, peering out at a city that had lived in my imagination for so long. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds, and the drizzle on the glass felt like a quiet welcome. For a moment, I simply sat still, letting the hum of the aircraft sink into silence inside me. This was no longer a dream. I was here. The airport was a blur of voices, signs, and hurried footsteps. People moved with purpose, some dragging suitcases, others clutching passports, all flowing like a restless river toward unseen destinations. I clutched my own bag tighter, reminding myself that I belonged here too, even if everything around me seemed foreign and intimidating. The accent in every announcement sounded crisp and polished, different from the voices I had grown up with, and I found myself listening carefully just to catch the words. As I stepped outside, London greeted me with a rush of cold air that cut through my coat. The city smelled of rain and car exhaust, a sharp contrast to the dusty streets of home. Taxis lined the pavement, red buses rumbled by, and people walked fast, their umbrellas bobbing like colorful shields. My eyes couldn't stay still. They darted from the towering glass buildings to the historic stone facades, from the rushing cars to the flashing advertisements. It was as though the entire world had been compressed into this one city, and I was a stranger walking through its beating heart. That first evening, I wandered through the streets with a mixture of awe and unease. Everything was unfamiliar, the rhythm of the traffic, the polite but distant smiles of strangers, the endless flow of languages I could barely recognize. I had imagined London as a place of magic, where every corner revealed something extraordinary, but standing there, alone with my suitcase, I felt a strange emptiness pressing at me.
The lights of the city were dazzling, yet behind them lingered a sense of loneliness. Back home, there had always been someone waiting for me, someone to ask if I had eaten, someone to notice if I was late. Here, I was just another face in a crowd that did not care who I was or where I came from. For the first time, the reality of distance sank into my chest. My family, my friends, the warmth of familiar voices. Suddenly, they all felt unbearably far away. Still, London had its way of softening the weight of solitude. The next day, as I strolled through Hyde Park, I watched children feed ducks by the pond, lovers sitting close on benches, and elderly men reading newspapers under umbrellas. The greenery stretched endlessly, and the air was filled with the earthy scent of wet grass. For a while, I forgot I was alone. The city revealed small moments of tenderness, hidden beneath its hurried pace, as though whispering that beauty was always within reach if I looked closely enough. At night, I walked across Westminster Bridge, gazing at the illuminated Houses of Parliament and the clock face of Big Ben glowing against the dark sky. The Thames moved silently beneath me, its waters carrying the reflections of centuries. I leaned on the railing and felt the cool mist rise, thinking of the countless travellers before me who had once stood in this very spot, filled with the same mixture of fear and wonder. It gave me comfort to imagine that I was part of that long chain of seekers, each one searching for belonging in a vast, unfamiliar world. Yet even in the moments of wonder, there were shadows of doubt. Ordering food felt like a test, as though my accent exposed me immediately as an outsider. The silence of my small rented room pressed hard on me at night, and I often lay awake listening to the muffled sounds of traffic, wondering if I had been foolish to come. But then, in the quiet, I would remind myself of the promise I had made to chase something bigger than comfort, to find strength in the unknown. London was overwhelming, but it was alive, and each day I took another step into its rhythm. The city was slowly teaching me that belonging did not come all at once. It came in pieces, in the smile of a kind stranger, in the taste of a new dish, in the sound of laughter echoing down a street I had never walked before. And though the loneliness lingered, I knew it was only the beginning of a new world, one that I was learning to call my own. Chapter 3: Finding My Place. The days that followed felt like an endless blur of crowded buses, busy streets, and strange accents that sometimes slipped past my ears without meaning. At first, I struggled with the feeling of being invisible. People moved quickly here, each carrying their own story, each rushing towards something that seemed urgent. I would walk among them, clutching my small bag, wondering if I would ever belong to this world that felt so distant from everything I had ever known. But slowly, change began to creep in, quietly, almost without my noticing. It started with small things. A shopkeeper near the corner cafe began to recognize my face and greet me with a warm smile every morning. The woman who sold newspapers at the underground station always added a gentle love at the end of her sentences, a word that carried a strange kind of comfort. These little gestures, though tiny in the chaos of London, made me feel less like a visitor and more like a person finding a place. I remember one particular evening when I was invited to join a small group of students at the library. They were from different parts of the world: India, Nigeria, Poland, and Brazil, and yet, in our shared strangeness, we found common ground. We laughed about the struggles of pronouncing English street names, shared meals that tasted of home, and spoke of families we missed. That evening, something shifted inside me. For the first time since my arrival, I felt less alone. Adapting was not always easy. There were days when the cold seeped into my bones, and no amount of warm tea could comfort me. There were nights when I stared at the ceiling of my small room, tears slipping down silently as the weight of distance pressed heavily on my chest. I missed the sound of familiar voices, the smell of home-cooked meals, the simple comfort of knowing that I belonged without question. Yet, alongside the loneliness, there were lessons. I learned that London, with all its grandeur and noise, had a way of teaching resilience. The city did not slow down for anyone, and so I had to learn to keep pace. I found myself asking strangers for directions, fumbling at first, but gaining confidence each time. I began to understand that every failure, whether it was missing a bus or misunderstanding an accent, was simply another step in the process of growing. One of the most memorable days was when I got lost in the heart of the city. I had wandered far from familiar streets, and for a moment, panic began to rise. But instead of fear consuming me, I decided to breathe and look around. The towering buildings stood like guardians of history. The river shimmered beneath the evening sun, and the streets echoed with countless lives being lived. In that moment, I realized something important. I was no longer just a visitor passing through. I was part of this rhythm now, part of the heartbeat of London. Friendships deepened, routines settled, and gradually, the unfamiliar became familiar. The underground no longer felt like a maze, and the sounds of the city became a kind of music that guided me. I began to notice beauty where I once saw only strangeness, the kindness in a stranger's eyes, the laughter of children playing in the park, the way the city lights reflected off wet streets after rain. By the time weeks turned into months, I found myself saying something unexpected. I am going home. And by home, I meant London. The city that had once felt intimidating and cold had opened its arms in quiet ways. It was not about the buildings or the landmarks anymore. It was about the growth that had happened inside me. London had taught me patience. It had taught me strength. And most importantly, it had shown me that belonging is not found in a place. It is built within us, piece by piece, as we face challenges, as we learn, and as we allow ourselves to open our hearts to new beginnings.